There are additional patterns in Genesis that I'm seeing that I want to talk about in this video. I'll show you what they are. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they're doing, but they're interesting. They're fun. My name is Dan Paulson. Everyone, welcome to the video. I am not a Christian. I analyze material. That's what I'm doing. I'm looking at this as a scholar, but I see some patterns in the Bible, and I've been working at those patterns for a long time. To that end, I've recovered what I call an analog pile, a collection of analogs that, well, here, let's just take a look at them. I call it the Eden 3-7 Abrahamic analog pool. You'll see why. This is going to get huge, but it's so hard to see. We got day 7 of the first creation story coupled with repeat 3 times where it said, we'll look at that. And here is where the pattern starts. And if you put these 2 creation stories side by side, you end up at that point where they would be day 7 said 3 times at the same point that Adam and Eve are naked, unashamed, and in the Garden of Eden. So that right there becomes the central the very first tie point. That is what starts the entire grid of numbers. The rest of the numbers that you see there, that comes about in just looking at and analyzing numbers. You have to understand that these were memorized and they could see things that we can't. So if I see a number 900 for 900 and so many years, I think, well, what is that 900 about? It's a clue to me. So I find out that I search and I realize that 900 is repeated exactly 7 times. So every number that appears with that 900 is being gathered up and brought to that pool. And the reason that is because it's going to continually become used throughout Genesis and throughout Abrahamic material. So it's very important that we gather up these numbers. They should look oddball to people. You see a 40 here, 40 there, 12 here, 12 there, 5s, 7s, 12s. There's a bunch of weird things that you look at and go, well, not only do those repeat a lot, but I also don't see things like 19 and 28 or that. It's not just there's a lot of common numbers that I see all the time. There's a lot of numbers that never do appear either. So I think something's weird. All right, so I've got other videos up to where the analog pool grows from, and I'll go ahead and post a link to that below. But this is what we have as far as the analogs. And I want to say this. It's important that they're numbers only. If it says 7 days, 7 years, 7 something like that, don't grab the days or the years. What the magic in this is, as I realized later, is the 7 or the number is what is holding the clue. That is this tie point back here. Now, that is incredibly versatile. A 7 is more versatile by itself than if it said 7 days or 7 years, that you're fixed with 7 days or 7 years if you use that. However, if you just use the 7 as the clue, you can now have 7 days, 7 years, 7 months, 7 daughters, 7 sons, 7 something, something, something. So the numbers are really the key to this pattern. The numbers are. And they had them memorized. They could count those out in their head. They could tell that not only did the story say in 7 days it will rain for 40 days and 40 nights, that repeating, the 7 and the 40 repeating right there is a clue. And then later it says in 7 days it did rain for 40 days and 40 nights. Bingo, we've got our clue right there. And we grab up the 40, and that 40 becomes usable all throughout as well. We're going to see that 40 used in a lot of places. In fact, if we had the story memorized, we would know that during that time frame at the same time, if you just read through that sometime and go, why do they keep saying Noah? At some point, it's like every 3rd or 4th word. That's a clue. Count them out. 40 times. They're all linking in such a manner that is so incredible that at first it was mind-boggling. Now it's like, whoa, wow, you got to see this. But I've made a comment before that there are things that I see that I haven't got figured out yet. That's what this video's about. I'm going to show you some things that I scratch my head over, and if anybody's got any ideas, I'm all ears. All right, let's take a look. In fact, before moving on, if you're doing this on your own, let me show you what I'm talking about as far as repeats. I didn't know about that 7th 3 times to begin with. I'm toying around and playing with things. But if I go over here and search up Noah, what I'm talking about down here is where you've got this, and Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in. And Noah went into the ark as God had commanded Noah. So you just see that and go, that is so much that you need to count them out. They're there for a reason. And once you start realizing that, you go back to that 7 and 3 and go, yeah, that's where it starts. You kind of reverse engineering it. What about the 600? What do we find there? exactly 3 times. So that comes off that list too. We got 7s pointing, we got 3s pointing. Whatever numbers appear here, we're bringing with it. Look, we got 600th year. That's an Eden point. Noah's life, 40 times E. That's an E. In the second month, 2 is one of our numbers. That's an E. 17th was not. 17 is now 1. And look at this. Sarai's name is said exactly 17 times. Okay, look at this. We know that Sarai becomes Sarah. If we look up Sarah, there's 37 results. Now, this is a fun one because 37 is not a number that we collected. However, 30 is a number we collected, and 7 is a number we collected. So you can add them together. 37 is a good number. Okay, so we add Sarai, 17, Sarah, 37, and now let's... Oh, and the 17, 10 and 7 added together, right? All right, Sarah, after Sarah dies off, the next woman in charge is who? Rebecca. Rebecca. 30 times, one of our numbers. You see that they're just continually maintaining that. Now, I'm not going to keep going along that because it just gets too boring, actually. Well, it won't if you're at first doing it, but you just keep pulling up numbers. Okay, let's do this goofy one here. I've got the name Haran, and we're going to go look at it in the Bible here. But it is repeated 13 times in Genesis. And when I put up these numbers, it's from the entire book of Genesis, unless I specify it's specific to a chapter. Sometimes you need to look at both of them, actually. Haran, though, 6 times it appears it refers to a person. Then there's 1 time it appears it's ambiguous. And then the next 6 times it appears, it refers to a place. Let's go look at that. Okay, Haran. Here's my 13 results. And if I go to the first one here, and actually before we do that, let me talk about that 13 for a minute. First sin, 4. We've got if you know 3, 7, and green up there was the good place. Then first sin happens, it's going to be the next step. So I've got 3 advancing to a 4, 7 advancing to an 8, 10 advances to 11, 12 advances to 13, 15 advances to 16, 17 to 18, and here we have a 21. It's going to continue to do that. If we were to go look up some of those now, we would see wicked shows up 8 times. That's a bad thing. Creature 8 times. Thigh, that's a strange one. That's a bad thing. Sodom, 21, yeah, and so on. So the number grid is holding both good and bad by simply advancing 1. All right, here, do you see something here that might line up? 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. If we're just looking at numbers and not the rest of the words, we're going from green, from a pure place, to 13 to a red place. This would represent that we are moving along and having life experiences that we're just judging life experiences, if you interpret it that way. But there we see the jump from 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and then in the 13th year they rebelled. That sounds like a step from 3 to 4, or from 7 to 8, or from Eden to first sin. I think we need to maintain this transition point here, understanding that it represents the time in the green, the Eden part. I put just because the font's green there. That is when we are little kids and we have not yet experienced life and become hurt. First sin represents we are now going off and experience life and becoming hurt. So that is the step that if we use that all the time, the story's going to flow in with that right there. We are interpreting this story, I am, as if it belongs in my psyche, as an inward path, as opposed to treating it as a historical something from back then. I'm treating it as if somebody from antiquity nested something in here for me that I'm supposed to be able to figure out. But without it being memorized, we've really lost a lot. We don't know these number counts. Okay, I took that sidebar to explain the 13. I realized that, I was moving ahead without that. So now that we know what the 13 is for Haran, let's get back to that. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran, or Haran, however you pronounce that. And those are people, aren't they? And begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Then we have a repeat. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father in Terah, in the land of his nativity. and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. We don't have any questions about this being a person yet, do we? Then it says, and Terah took Abram his son and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son. Sounds like a person still. Down here we go to this. To go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. That one's kind of ambiguous. They came unto Haran and dwelt there. It sounds like Haran almost sounds like a place. You can't quite tell. You can't quite tell. However, the very next one, and the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So it went up here from a person to a place. If we were to continue, in fact, you know what? I just saw something goofy here. What? Let's look at this for a minute. We're here on the edge here with me. Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So Terah, watch this right here. Terah's dad. I'm just going to add that in right now. Oops. I'll take it out later. So dad. Okay, and Haran, his son. Okay, we get down here. Haran is who, son? Died before his father, Terah, dad. Terah. Who's Terah? Dad. See, this looks weird. Dad died in son. Well, that'll be fun. Better unwrap that one, huh? These are iterations of us. The father would be the one who gives offspring to the next iteration of you. The father dies in the son. This is my old self dying into my new self. See where I am here, looking down there. There we go. And departed out of Haran, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. Flee thou to Laban, my brother, to Haran. Well, that could be person. Now therefore, flee thou to Laban, my brother, to Haran. No, that sounds like a place. And went toward Haran. And they said, of Haran are we. And Jacob said unto my brethren, where do you come from? They come from Haran. Okay, so the first 6 times you saw it was a person, and the one ambiguous one, and then the next 6 ones where obviously it's a place. Okay, do we see that transition? Do you know what's going on there? Same name, it changed from an individual to a location. Do you know why? Okay, first on the list, I want to look at Abel, just because it's an odd one. If you type in Abel, the name comes up 8 times exactly. However, the structure of Abel appears a total of 12 times. I don't know if that is significant. If it's an accident, it's just right on top of a 12. 12 would be a good thing. But what happens? Abel gets killed by Cain. Cain is the bad element. Abel is the good element. So it makes sense to have Abel as 12. It doesn't make sense to have Abel as 8. But then you got, I don't know. It's a weird one. Here's one, though, that should be, familiar to people. We've got Cain, and the name Cain is repeated 16 times. We've got our Cain and Abel story. And then we get into a lineage, and Tubal appears, which is no big deal, except that later on, what we see is a Tubalcain. It looks like they've blended those two together, Tubal and Cain. Tubalcain was said 2 times. On the wrong page here. There we go. And what we've actually got, this is the structure of it. Cain is said 14 times total. Then Tubalcain is said twice, and then later Cain is said 2 more times for a total of 16. Cain also appears in the name Canaan, and Cain is in there 23 times total. That would be a good thing if it was, I don't know if Cain is a good thing. Maybe it morphed. I don't know. That's why I don't understand some of this. And then Canaan, Canaanites, total 57. The Canaan from Canaanites, 57. We got 50 as a number and 7 as a number. Anybody watching my analog farm work, I'm looking at other things in those analog farms that the names I didn't look at. When I was looking at the numbers pointing to other numbers, I wasn't looking at how many times the names repeated as well. So this is more verification. I would have to go back and do that analog farm again, Adam's analog farm, to further demonstrate that these names, when they're said in conjunction with the numbers, are also helping point the way. It's not just numbers repeating 7 times or 5 times or something like that. It is these names also being repeated the same amount of times. So it's really this internal network of, I'm not sure what's going on. Shem is said 14 times. That would be, I don't know. There also could be some error in my work because I'm using a downloaded copy of the Bible that was interpreted or translated by somebody, and I do find minor variations between translations. They seem to be typically right on the money. We do have a blowout with Ham. But you know what? We have things like Ham is said 10 times. There's a Hamathite person, Hamor, Hamul, Ham total of 23 times. What does Ham and Abram? Blend them and it becomes Abraham. So we have name blending going on. Cain, Tubal, Tubalcain. Ham, Abram, Abraham. There's a few more like that. Those are the ones that I go, I'm not exactly sure. I got the numbers pretty well figured out. You know what? Let me go back and show an example of that name sequence I'm talking about. Here we have this is the Adam analog farm. And here I have one where there is a number 70 that I collected because there was a 70 appeared elsewhere. But I saw it here and I thought it was maybe because it appeared without any other numbers that it just closed out something or began something. I wasn't really sure. But if I type in the name Canaan, I'll paste it in there. Canaan. It appears 5 times. 5 is one of the numbers that is good, so I'm going to say that Canaan is like a 5 or another green number. I'm just going to go ahead and make it green right there. And Mahalalel. Mahalalel, is that right? I'm going to just copy and paste that up in here too. Let's see what we get. Oh, and we get 5 as well. So I'm going to change that to, I now know that that is that it represents something that is coming from a pool. But it's one layer away from it. They've taken, instead of just putting out a 5 and another 5, well, let's put out Canaan 5 times and Mahalalel 5 different times, and they can do the pointing for us. So they're spreading it around, but it's ingenious. Here's actually another one. If you're just looking at numbers, I'm just going through here and looking at numbers at some point, and I realize what I should be doing. So we've got 7-fold and 70 and 7-fold. And if, again, I'm not going to call that 77. I'm going to call it a 70 and a 7. That means there's a 7 in front of a 70 and a 7 behind a 70. And Lamech is said 10 times. 70 is another number right there that is going to be on the list. What if I go avenged? Just that one time. Okay, 1 is on our list, so that's a good number. That's how the numbers are being gathered, though. The 5, here we've got the same thing going on. Okay, if I get down to the Sodom analog farm, what I find is that 5 shall lack 5, lack of 5, 40 and 5. 5 was said 3 times. It's treated like a discrete number. 5 was said 3 times right here, so 5 is being gathered as well. These are the things that get your attention. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you destroy and not spare it for the 50 righteous that are there? Far be it for you to slay the righteous and the wicked, that the righteous should be wicked. When they're repeating words like this over and over again, count them. Count them. What we get right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That links us into an analog farm, and we collect all these numbers. You see, we've got our 50, 40, 30, 20 and 10 right here. And those appear elsewhere, gathered up as well. That's how they're encoding the message. Isn't that brilliant? But there's more ahead. I've said before, there's things I don't understand that I'm looking at, and some of that sequencing, the numbers I'm getting more and more. I said I think I have those, but I actually don't have them completely. There's still some nebulous areas for me. I see the big steps, but it is so old, and I don't know what their life was like. You try to get in their heads, but... Okay, right now what you're looking at represents an experiment I just did recently here. This is Adam's analog farm, and I took the entire chapter 5, copied and pasted it into a document on its own so that I could do some searching in here. Now, what I've done, if you're following what the work is, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing names and just, well, you know what? Nouns and verbs. Yeah, grab your nouns and verbs along the way and tell the computer to tell you how many times it's in there, in this. And right here, what we have is Adam is 5 times, God 5, created is 5 times, God is 5 times. Oh yeah, we already know that. What do we get? So let me move ahead. As we're getting down here then, as I'm beginning to start collecting numbers, you see this in the blue right here, there's a 30. That needs to be collected. There's a 3 30s in this pile. And not only are there 3 30s here, but it exists in a pile where Adam is said 5 times. That's on the analog list. Lived is said 17 times. That's on the analog list. And 100 is 5 times. 30 is 3 times. I'm going to ignore years. Begat is 27. Likeness is 2. And Seth is 5. So all of these, that 30 right there is appearing with other names who are repeated enough times that just over and over again, there is this incredibly tight process for collecting, not just for collecting, but for putting other things. I don't know how to describe it. I've never seen anything like it. It's a cross-referencing within itself by repeating names the same amount of times as the numbers, and the numbers are the clues. It makes my brain hurt to try and figure it out. But this is all of the analog farm then, which tells me as I'm gathering up those numbers, the 70, the 60, the 5, the 10, the 40, the 15s, look at what they're appearing with. Other numbers that are appearing the same amount of times, 6 and 2 and 90 and 3 and 5 and 10 and 20 and 30. All of that continues to happen. I won't keep going through here. I'm going to go down to the bottom here and just say that this is what we see. Likeness is said 2 times, repeated twice in here. Likeness, 770, walked, 500. 3 times, 30 and 80. 5 times, Adam, God, created, and 100. Seth, Enos, 7, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, 90. 7 times, 800 and 900. Died would be on the red side, yeah. 10 times, days was said. 17 times, lived. 27, begat. 28 years, I've got that there too. Okay, so I don't know if you're following along with what I'm doing or not, but if you can see this, what I'm going to suggest is that in the background there is an incredibly intense, super intense numbering system that we would only be able to see if we had these memorized, if we were in antiquity. Not only would we have to have them memorized, but we would have to have them memorized so well that we could go through here and count in our memory how many times these appear. How many times was Adam said? Well, in the analog farm in Adam's analog farm. Back then it wasn't chapter 5, it was just in a story. It was the next section. It would be the book of the generations of Adam. That's the one you go to. And then you would just start going through and you would know all of these, but you would have to figure them out. This would take you a long time to figure out, to count it in your head. I've said it before, it's like a nursery rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. I'll just stop right there. And, okay, yeah, we know that. No big deal. How many times was twinkle said? Oh. How many times was little said? How about star? that you have to start doing that then with the material in order to see it. So it's complex, but it's deep. If you can follow this, I know I show my wife and she just goes, honey, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you can follow this, you would go, oh my God, this is intensely right on the money. Now look at this. Okay, I've just jumped back to the analog list for right now. What I want you to take a look at here is our beginning group right here. We've got let's take a look at that 3, that 7, and that 12. Those appear in a lot of places, don't they? This is in Genesis right here, where these were established. Let's go in Abrahamic material all the way to the New Testament. Okay, I don't need to spend a great deal of time with it, but I'm going to just quickly go through a few things. I've highlighted the name David, Abraham, and Judas right here. Let's just go do a search for them and see the appearance. This is the book of Matthew, King James Version. David appears 17 times. Sarai appeared 17 times. 17 was on our list, gathered up in the flood story by, what was it, 600, Noah, and 2. All right, so we've got David 17 times. Abraham. Seven times. It's on our list. Judas. 8. Ooh, went into the red zone. What does that sound like? Okay. 3. 12 times. 7. 12 times. 12. 12 times. Go ahead and just keep going. Do you see this? This is Exodus, New Revised Standard Version, the updated edition. Remember 70 was one that I was, kind of looking at establishing there with the 7 surrounding it and other places. Let's just take a look here. 70 appears 7 times here. So it continually in Abrahamic material is going to be cross-referencing the same numbers. I got you. If you're using this one to search for numbers, make sure that there's a lot of words that have been added into these ones that do not exist. Song, it says 3 times, but truthfully, it's not. It's only twice. This one was added in by whoever was doing the translating. I find these and just put an asterisk in there. I still can read them then, and they don't come up on the count if you want to look on your own. This time, to speed it up, I'm just going to give you the word count that I found in the book of Romans. 3 times scriptures, it said. 5 times deed, olive. 7 times scripture. 12 times gospel. 17 times Jesus Christ. Believe 20 times. Gentile, that would put it over the limit. A 20 is good and a 3 is good, so a 23 would be good. 24 is too high. Gentile is the bad thing. But you see that they're maintaining the grid. Unrighteous wise 6. I haven't quite dialed in 6 yet, but it's looking like it's not 7, it's not 5. It's in between the two. 5 is good, 7 is good. 6 must be not okay. I'm still playing with these and growing with it. It's very old stuff, but you can see that they're maintaining this count and that you would not know it by just carrying the Bible and reading it. You'd have to have it memorized, and you would have to be able to search your own memory. Because what do you do for hobbies? You know them so well, you can build parts in your head. That's how they knew these. We don't. Well, I kind of strayed on this video, didn't I? I want to keep showing those combinations as they show up, and illustrate that numbering system is really critical. That is what is in place in the background. That's what we have to get our hands on. Repeats, numbering. It's an encoded story. How do you put all the pieces and parts in it? By repeating sequences or something like that. Yeah, that's about all you can do. You can't take anything out. People would never see it to begin with. So you have to work within the story. And if you're trying to pass something along, that's how you do it. At least that solidifies it. There's things that you read analogously that are not based in the numbering system. But the numbering system is there to continue a repetition. And now we use that 7 or the 3 or whatever number for all manner of things. And we're going to keep that in place all throughout. It's going to confirm Abrahamic material because it is all throughout. The weird thing here is back in Genesis, the things like the Tubal, Cain, Tubal, Tubalcain, the Abram and Ham becoming Abraham that's an easy one. Those are iterations of us. But the Cain, Tubal, Tubalcain, ones like that, I'm like, boy, I'm not quite sure what's happening there. Like I've said before, there's things that I see in here that I don't recognize yet. And that's just some of it right there. So it's more like, I think people that would figure it out are people that are familiar with coding or something like that. They're not coding here, but in a way they are. It's just repeating names and numbers that are going to establish a pattern that's going to lead to something. If we can find all the patterns and line them up and look at them and analyze them, then we can see what they're doing. Anyway, I hope the video was fun and interesting. If anybody has any ideas on those combinations, I'd love to hear it. I hope the video was fun and interesting, and I'll see you in the next one.